Imagine a killing device so efficient, so utterly devoid of emotion, that it was hailed as a humanitarian invention. Not an axe, not a noose, but a razor-sharp, precisely angled mechanism designed with one cold purpose: to make death instantaneous and equal for all. It wasn't just a machine for severing heads. It was the ultimate, terrifying symbol of an entire political revolution. For 2 centuries, the guillotine stood as history's most infamous slaughter apparatus, cutting short thousands of lives and forever altering the landscape of state-sanctioned execution. The question isn't how it worked, but how a tool of terror became the great equalizer of the damned. Make sure to subscribe if you want more deep dives into history's darkest moments, and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Before this infamous machine, justice in 18th century France was wildly unbalanced. If you were a noble, you received the mercy of a swift sword stroke. If you were a commoner, you faced unspeakable, agonizing torture, being hanged, burned, or even broken on the wheel. This brutal double standard offended the radical new ideals of the French Revolution. A forward-thinking doctor and politician, Joseph Ignace Guillotine, demanded change. He argued for an egalitarian death, a punishment applied equally to every rank, and one that eliminated the horrific suffering common in public executions. His persuasive claim, "Now, with my machine, I cut off your head in the twinkling of an eye, and you feel nothing." Ironically, Dr. Guillotine neither invented nor designed the apparatus that would carry his name. That engineering challenge was assigned to Dr. Antoine Louis, a renowned surgeon who had studied prior decapitation methods used in places like Scotland and Italy. Dr. Louis perfected the design, employing a slanting blade, the key innovation, to guarantee a clean, flawless slice through the neck. After Parisian craftsmen completed the build, the device was ready for its debut in 1792. The first victim was a robber named Nicolas Jacques Pelletier. On April 25, 1792, he was paraded before a large, expectant crowd at the Place de Grève. When the heavy blade dropped, the silence was chilling, a profound shock at the machine's clinical efficiency. But the public's initial fascination quickly soured. They craved drama and spectacle, and the guillotine, they felt, had stolen the entertainment from the execution. They had no idea that this cold piece of engineering was about to claim the lives of the most famous figures in Europe. The guillotine rapidly transitioned from a mechanism of humane justice to a nationwide spectacle. The Place de la Révolution in Paris, once a monument to the monarchy, became the blood-soaked epicenter of death. Here, the severed heads of King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were displayed to the ecstatic cheers of the masses. These executions weren't just punishments. They were daily, theatrical performances drawing observers from every social class. Presiding over this macabre scene was the Sanson dynasty of executioners. Charles-Henri Sanson, the family's most notorious representative, personally managed over 3,000 executions. In his trademark red vest, he performed his duties with ruthless, unflinching methodology, guaranteeing that justice, or perhaps sheer vengeance, was perfectly delivered. His work became so routine that he once chillingly noted, "I am the last face they see before eternity." Among the observers, a particularly unsettling group known as the tricoteuses, or knitting women, gained infamy. They reserved front-row seating at the scaffold, their needles rhythmically clicking as bodies fell into the waiting basket below. Immortalized in fiction and history, these women became a terrifying symbol of the sheer normalization of public killing. The guillotine, conceived as an instrument of modern equality, had devolved into a grim form of mass entertainment, where life and death were decided before an eager, utterly unflinching audience. By 1793, the cold efficiency we just discussed had metastasized. The guillotine's gleaming blade, initially pitched as the ultimate symbol of enlightened justice, rapidly transformed into the perfect instrument of systemic, state-sponsored paranoia. The French Revolution, desperate and paranoid, was eating itself alive, and this sleek killing machine became the cornerstone of political cleansing. Under the chilling watch of Maximilien Robespierre, the figurehead of the radical Jacobin faction, France plummeted into what history calls the Reign of Terror. In this blood-soaked epic, All that was needed for you to be sent to the scaffold was the mere hint of suspicion. If you're finding this deep dive into revolutionary paranoia fascinating, be sure to hit that like button. It helps us keep exploring these dark corners of history. The infamous Law of Suspects, enacted in September 1793, fundamentally broke the justice system. It legally eliminated the need for concrete evidence in a trial, effectively giving revolutionary courts the license to condemn anyone perceived as an enemy of the Republic with terrifying velocity. The tribunal system, a court originally meant to ensure fairness, degenerated into a lethal conveyor belt for death, ultimately facilitating an estimated 16,000 executions by the blade. Nobody was safe. Whether you were a noble, a priest, a moderate revolutionary, or just an ordinary Parisian citizen, you were equally liable to face the basket. One of the most defining and shocking moments of this period was the mass execution of the Girondins on October 31, 1793. 21 key politicians, who had once been hailed as heroes and champions of the revolution's core ideals, were dragged through Paris in open tumbrils before being systematically massacred. Their collective deaths cemented the triumph of political extremism and demonstrated, with undeniable finality, how the guillotine had been perverted into a deadly tool of political annihilation. But as history often demonstrates, power mercilessly wielded inevitably rebounds. Robespierre himself was not immune to the device he had exploited so ruthlessly. As the fear of his dictatorship swelled among his colleagues, he was finally arrested in July 1794. His own execution, met not with solemnity but with roaring cheers from the very populace he once commanded, perfectly symbolized the swift end of the reign of terror. The guillotine, once a beacon of revolutionary ideals, proved itself to be a monstrous mechanism that ruthlessly devoured its own architects. The 20th century saw the guillotine transform from a symbol of revolutionary justice into a morbid, anachronistic curiosity. Yet, incredibly, it remained France's official execution method until 1977. Public displays had long ceased, but behind the walls of obscure prisons, the blade continued to fall in secret. The guillotine's nearly 2-century-long, blood-soaked narrative concluded with the case of Hamida Jandoubi, a Tunisian-born man convicted of a brutal murder. Jandoubi's horrific crimes sparked a national uproar and reignited the contentious debate over France's continued use of capital punishment. Sentenced in 1977, he was transported to Baumet's prison in Marseille in the dead of night on September 10th. The executioners carefully prepared the device, and Jandoubi was tightly fastened to the bale, the wooden plank that slides the condemned into position. In mere seconds, the guillotine delivered its final, irreversible stroke, closing the door on state-sanctioned beheadings in France. This death put France at a pivotal crossroads. Calls for the abolition of the death penalty reached a fever pitch, arguing that such a barbaric practice had no place in a sophisticated, modern democracy. Finally, in 1981, President François Mitterrand signed the official act outlawing executions across the country, rendering the guillotine completely obsolete. What was once celebrated as a humane tool of justice was now justly recognized as a gruesome relic of a vanished era. With Jandoubi's death, the guillotine met its own symbolic execution, this time delivered by the unstoppable hand of history. The guillotine was far more than a device. It was a perfect, chilling mirror of the age that birthed it. It was created to enforce justice, yet it spiraled into an icon of excess and terror. Its blade enforced equality in death, but in doing so, it exposed the profound, darker limits of human power. Governments rise and fall, but history always proves that unrestrained power, once unleashed, inevitably turns and consumes those who dare to wield it. So here is the final question we want you to answer. Was the guillotine a necessary, brutal step toward modern justice, or simply a grim spectacle that revealed the ultimate failures of human governance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and remember the profound words of Victor Hugo: "Death belongs to God alone. By what right do men touch that unknown thing?"